नमस्कार, स्वागत है आप सबका पुनः एक बार सृजनी के पटल पर। वेरी वार्म वेलकम टू ऑल आवर डियर व्यूअर्स टुडे। आज इस कहानी का एक जर्नी का एक नया चैप्टर हम लेकर आए हैं आपके लिए। अभी तक की स्टोरी जो आपने सुनी है पिछले 7 एपिसोड्स में, उसमें हमने जाना कि कैसे इंडिया इन्वॉल्व हुआ 1971 वॉर में, बांग्लादेश में क्या स्थिति थी। उसके बाद हमने जाना उस पॉलिटिकल सिनेरियो के बारे में जो उस समय एग्जिस्ट करता था, किस तरीके से इंडिया अगेंस्ट द वर्ल्ड एक प्लेटफॉर्म था ये पूरा, क्योंकि एक मॉरल लड़ाई थी हमारे लिए, एक ह्यूमैनिटी की लड़ाई थी हमारे लिए ये, जिसके लिए हम किसी और देश के लिए हमने ये जंग लड़ी। हमने जाना भारत की जो सेना है, जो थल सेना है, उसका क्या रोल था। ईस्ट फ्रंट की कहानियां सुनी हमने जनरल चतुर्वेदी से, और वेस्ट फ्रंट की कहानियां सुनाने हमें आए थे जनरल बख्शी और कुलदीप सिंह चांदपुरी जी हैं, ब्रिगेडियर कुलदीप सिंह चांदपुरी के बेटे हरदीप सिंह चांदपुरी जी। आगे बढ़े और हमने सुनी नेवी की कहानियां। कराची की बॉम्बिंग सुन के आप सबके खून में उबाल आया, और आपने सुनी कैसे पीएनएस गाजी को उड़ाया गया था, उसकी कहानी आपने सुनी। बहुत अच्छी जर्नी रही है, बहुत अच्छा फीडबैक मिलता रहा है आप सबसे, और सबसे अच्छा लग रहा है कि हर जनरेशन के जो लोग हैं वो कनेक्ट कर रहे हैं इस पूरी सीरीज से। दिनकर जी की पंक्तियों से शुरुआत करते हैं हम आज के सेशन की। गरजो अंबर की भरो रंचो डार से, क्रोधांतर रोर हाकों से, हुंकारों से, यह आग मात्र सीमा की नहीं लपट है, मूड़ो स्वतंत्रता पर ही यह संकट है, जातीय गर्व पर क्रूर प्रहार हुआ है, माँ के किरीट पर ही ये वार हुआ है, अब जो सिर पर आ पड़े नहीं डरना है, जन्मे हैं तो 2 बार नहीं मरना है, 2 बार नहीं मरना है। तो ये जो लड़ाई थी मॉरल वैल्यूज की, उसमें एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल था हमारी एयरफोर्स का। आज हम इस कहानी को आगे सुनेंगे, और उसके लिए सबसे पहले मैं स्वागत करने जा रही हूँ, हमारे एक गेस्ट हैं, हमारे अतिथि हैं, विंग कमांडर एसएस कृष्णमूर्ति सर। सर, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है सृजनी के पटल पर। एक्सटेंडिंग अ वार्म वेलकम टू यू सर। हाउ आर यू डूइंग टुडे सर?
Good. Thank you so much for the welcome. And what I want to tell you today is essentially the helicopter story. Why the helicopter story? Because I am involved in the helicopters for the previous 9 months before the war. And I should not be talking about the other people because I don't have the first-hand information, which I don't want to give. Okay. Now I shall be able to tell you authoritatively, to a certain extent, all the stories on the helicopter, how it happened, and how it ended up in accelerating the surrender.
Sir,
Go ahead.
Definitely, sir. We are looking forward to that story, sir. And as we do that, I will also extend a very warm welcome to our guest who's joining us all the way from London, a different city, different country. Major Kamaldeep Singh Sandhu, sir. Very, very warm welcome to you, sir. बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका जी आयानु.
Thank you very much, Prachi. Thanks for having me on this program. And it's as a said earlier, it's a great pleasure to be along with Krishnamurti sir, who's actually been there. We have studied war from a different perspective. हमने किताबों में पढ़ा है, सर ने तो आंखों से देखा है. So I'll probably try my best to give a different perspective of the war from a different angle, slightly bigger from microscopic point of view.
Sir, that'll be helpful. Before we begin, मैं चाहती हूँ कि हमारे जो ऑडियंस है, हम उन्हें आपका एक छोटा सा परिचय दें, आपके बारे में थोड़ा बताएं। तो कुछ जो हम इंटरनेट से, गूगल से ढूंढ के लाए हैं और आपकी सहायता से हमने जाना है, वो शेयर करती हूँ। पहले आप सबको बताती हूँ मैं विंग कमांडर कृष्णमूर्ति सर के बारे में। इन्होंने इंडियन एयरफोर्स ज्वाइन करी थी एनडीए के थ्रू। कमाल की बात यह है, आज हमारे दोनों स्पीकर्स एनडीए वाले हैं, तो एनडीए वालों, यू विल बी वेरी प्राउड ऑफ आवर स्पीकर्स टुडे। सर ने 1971 वॉर के जो हेलीकॉप्टर ऑपरेशंस है उसमें पार्टिसिपेट किया था एज अ पायलट, और बहुत सारे डिफरेंट हेलीकॉप्टर्स ही इज फ्लोन, बेल G3s, चेतक्स, Mi-4s, Mi-8s, and cheetahs. There's a whole range which we'll learn about from sir today. He was there, he witnessed the great surrender story. तो 71 वॉर की जो सरेंडर हुई थी उसको सर ने विटनेस किया है, and I think that's a story all of us are very eager to hear about today. And now to introduce our second speaker, Major Kamaldeep Singh Sandhu. सर हैं तो वैसे आर्मी वाले, लेकिन रिसर्च पूरी करके रखते हैं हर चीज पर. एनडीए के 97 कोर्स के हैं सर. 6 पैरा में, यानी जो आपने लाल टोपी वाले हमारे स्पेशल कमांडोज देखे हैं ना, उसे कहते हैं पैराट्रूपर्स रेजिमेंट, उससे आते हैं, 6 पैरा से आते हैं. और मास्टर है वॉर एंड मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड से, किंग्स कॉलेज लंदन से इन्होंने एक कोर्स किया है. और डिफेंस स्टडीज और वॉर स्टडीज पे इन्होंने अपनी जो पढ़ाई है उसे आगे बढ़ाया है. तो मैंने ये बात पहले भी कही कि फौजी जो है ना, ये वंस अ फौजी ऑलवेज अ फौजी. तो इट्स एन ऑनर टू हैव बोथ ऑफ यू ऑन स्टेज टुडे. Is there anything you would like to say, sir, Krishnamurti sir, and then Kamal sir? I'll welcome you on stage.
I have just sent you that surrender photograph. If you see that,
oh wow, I will look it up.
You can introduce that photograph in which I am there. What you have it in your, yeah. Have a look. Yes. I've just sent you.
Perfect, sir. I'll try and upload that. Before that, I'll just pull up, the one I have, which is from the internet, which is this one. And as you see this picture, I'll try and pull up the other one, sir.
The one which readily available with all the 4 generals and air marshals and you will see one young flying officer.
Amazing, sir.
I probably would have been the youngest fellow in the entire photograph.
That's amazing. So you still are the youngest on the panel, let me tell you that. So that's the picture right here.
Yeah, that's the one.
Amazing. This is so good, sir. You were a part of, you witnessed history, sir. This is amazing. आप सबको दिखाना चाहती हूँ गौर से, आपको सर दिख रहे होंगे और इस पे zoomed in भी है, तो आप देख सकते हैं ये वो सरेंडर पिक्चर है जो पूरी दुनिया ने देखी है. और हमारे लिए बहुत गर्व की बात है कि इतने जो हमारे वीर ऑफिसर्स हैं, who've made history, who've literally picked history and revised it for the world, वो आज हमारे साथ जुड़े हैं. कहानी शुरू सर.
No, I want to tell you that when you showed that 71 introduction, you showed Niazi sir signing it quickly. Please understand and please be aware that none of the initial 3 pens wrote. It was they were as if supporting the Pakistani cause of not surrendering. Okay.
Oh my God.
Ultimately, the pen which was given by an onlooker worked, and that is what he signed with. So this is just the background. Otherwise, we will tell you little more about it a little later.
Excellent.
So I thought I will tell you only about the helicopters, but yes, we couldn't have been fearless. We couldn't have been so easy to fly all over the Bangladesh, particularly the eastern portion of it, because we got the total air superiority by our fighters, by our transports, and by whatever the name you want to say. Because the Pakistani Air Force air element in East Pakistan were not able to operate for one reason, that is, India attacked all the aeroplanes, all the air bases. Dhaka, the 3 satellite airfields were all only holes, big ditches. They couldn't have taken off. Even for a helicopter to park, we couldn't find any place. Okay, so when we went actually on the 16th to witness the surrender and the senior officers when we took, we didn't have place to park. We parked all over and then went. So this may give you an idea what kind of an air superiority we had and what kind of fearlessness we had. But I may also tell you that we didn't fly in the total peace area. Anyone with a rifle, anyone with a small little bazooka, anyone with small little firearm could fire at a helicopter and we would have had problems. So what happened was, even at night when we flew, we only avoided all the places where we saw lights, so that there is no question of anyone firing at us. We were flying at 500 feet, 1,000 feet, almost like treetop level. Sometimes we were flying at the grass level, kind of a thing. And many a time we couldn't land. Many a time we just hovered and dropped the troops. So we had great cooperation amongst the Indian Air Force and the army which we were flying for.
Sir.
I must also tell you that before the war broke out, from the March 1971 onwards, from the month, we knew the story, how many refugees came in, how many millions came in, where all they came in, and what all they brought. They brought only diseases, they brought only epidemics. It was difficult for the local civil government to control them. They took the army help. Army went on to kindly arrange, help the civil authorities, a park, a place for the refugees, refugee camp. Within a week, they all had settled down. Army officers, doctors went and looked after them, contained the epidemics. They brought cholera, they brought typhoid, we named the thing they brought because they were in very bad condition. They walked across, they had nothing in their hand. They walked all the way, and through thick and thin, they were there. So they brought. When we were in Silchar, we had very strict orders not to go to the town. Please, we had to keep ourselves into the camp only. So you can imagine that kind of a situation, why the entire country should go through that. So the decision was taken that these people will have to go back. How they go back? Pakistan didn't want them. Bangladesh, they said these people are Bangladeshis, you keep them. We want only Pakistanis in our country, East Pakistanis. So that is how it happened. And we said, kindly take them back. They said no. Then they were stupid enough to attack our 8 airfields in the western sector. And they said, please come and hit me. And that is how the Indian Air Force started. Within a week, within 4 days, we had the air superiorities. And they said, we will look after this side, you go ahead. The army, number 4 Corps, which our unit, our squadron was looking after.
So
we had 7 helicopters that time, and we had been flying for the 4 Corps from March, April onwards. But when this war started, we moved in, and we were literally in the open. We were literally under the sky, flying, eating, refueling, and sleeping. And we ate whenever we had food. We slept whenever we could. Day and night, we all flew. Somewhere in the middle, 3 or 4 more helicopters from some other units, from other squadrons joined us. So we always had 11 to 12 helicopters all the time. So combined with this number, we could try our hand, the army could try our hand in Sylhet in transporting the troops. Please understand the proper transporting the troops. The infantry is basically on foot. But Bangladesh is a culmination of 3 big rivers, Tista, Ganga, and Brahmaputra. Not a single place is left without the water of these 3 rivers. But being in winter, being in December, the certain places had dried up, but essentially the entire country was full of water. The rivers had, even the small rivulets had water. An army has the habit of building bridges, crossing a river, dismantle the bridge and continue. But with these people, now I must tell you 2 important names. One is an Air Force man, Group Captain Chandan Singh, who was with his fellow Rajput, Lieutenant General Sagat Singh, Commander 4 Corps. These 2 people joined and thought big. He said, why cross the river by foot? Why not use the helicopter? And none of the helicopters, we were not on the offensive. We were only for peacetime role. We were only for carrying out the casualty evacuation, mercy missions, and carrying the food and rations. Even the arms and ammunition were not done that time. So when we started, we carried the troops. It took us, let us say, I'm giving an example. If the helicopter took 1 minute to cross, the same place would have been done by the army after the bridge, small or big bridge, it would have taken 1 day. How much of advantage we gave? 23 hours and 59 minutes.
23 hours, 59
We did,
minutes. That's a big one.
we did it in 1 minute. So
Sir.
when we did it in 1 minute, they said this kind of quickness, this kind of easy transportation,
Sir.
they have not seen, they have not experienced, because this is the first time in large scale the helicopters were in the war. They said, can you do it? This many numbers. He said, we do that. So we did. We flew day in and day out. So Sylhet, the entire garrison went and locked themselves inside the town, and they never came out. Like that, we isolated all the East Pakistani army in small pockets, and we avoided them. Spray bullets came from all over, wherever they were. And when we found this was a good effort, these two gentlemen, when they found the professionalism, capability, and the accurate landing of the helicopters, they said these pilots are reliable, helicopter is reliable, let us try some more. They thought, General Sagat Singh, please understand, please remember, he was not to cross the Meghna River and approach Dhaka. He was only to cover from the eastern border from India and leave the offensive to the west and northwest side. But Sagat Singh, when we found that this was the easiest way to cover everything, they asked us, can you cross the Meghna River? We said yes. We went and lined up. We picked up the para commandos, and we took Sagat Singh's old para guards, and then we dropped them. And right at the doorstep of Dhaka, on the 9th, 10th itself, these people were cornered in Dhaka. They protracted the surrender till the 15th, 16th. Why? Because they thought China will help them, UN will help them, and the USA through 7th Fleet, UN, United Nations will do with the ceasefire order, and China from the north. China was ruled out because of the snow, and 7th Fleet, Indian Navy did not permit them to enter the Bay of Bengal. And of course, the UN did not interfere in this thing because they knew what we were going through. This was a mastery of our diplomacy that time, that the entire world knew what we were going through. Why we were interfering in the other people. Somebody said, why are you interfering in the internal affair of Pakistan? We said, the one single two-nation theory is no more a two-nation theory. It is a three-nation theory now.
Right.
That we have to liberate these people, and the rightfully legally elected Mujibur Rahman was in jail. He was not permitted to form the government. So this being the background, I leave for Kamaldeep to tell him from his side. Thank you, Prachi. Over to you.
No, thank you. So it was a beautiful brief because you summarized the entire story for us about how all of this started. At this point, I would love to introduce Major Kamaldeep Singh Sandhu. And sir, I have a question for you. Sir, there's context to the Airforce story here. And Krishnamurti sir, please feel free to chime in. You know, you've witnessed that era. 65 का जो वॉर था वो बहुत क्रूशल था हमारे लिए, और वहां से कुछ लेसन्स और लर्निंग्स थी जो कि शायद पाकिस्तान ने नहीं उतने अच्छे से अडैप्ट करी जितने अच्छे से इंडिया ने करी. उस पे सर आप कुछ लाइट डालना चाहेंगे तो?
Yeah, sure. So I think the learning lessons for Indian Armed Forces started in the defeat from the defeat of 1962 war, है ना. उससे हमने build up शुरू करना किया, all three services पे focus किया. 65 war was sort of a test for us. Pakistan thought here's a chance to defeat them when the Indian army is still weak, armed forces, and they tried that. उससे पहले 65 war से पहले they did little action at Run of Kutch. उसमें India did not respond forcefully, है ना. So General Ayub Khan thought that they had the sort of what do you call advantage, the psychological advantage over Indian army, that we are still not ready, and that sort of forced him and his generals to plan Operation Clan Slam and the other one in Kashmir. That war ended in stalemate, right? In the whole war in 1965, the Indian Air Force specifically, they lost 19 officers, about 21 airmen, 7 officers became POW. 36 aircrafts were lost while flying in the in air-to-air battles, and 35 aircrafts were lost on ground, which is a tremendous amount of loss, as if we see from one perspective. Air Chief Marshal P.C. Lal, who was the Air Chief in 71 war, in 65, he was the Vice Chief of Air Staff, and he had a very good ringside view of the affairs of things that were happening. When the war clouds of 71 were looming, he made a lot of changes. उन्होंने पूरा command structure change किया at strategic level. Down at ground levels, उन्होंने blast fence बनाए at the airfields. The air defense radars और उनकी communications वो improve किया. Locating, the mobile locating on observation stations जो थे, उनको border के साथ locate किया, so that हमें early warning मिल सके. Armament की पूरी supply की, और जो peacetime squadrons थी, उनको forward stage किया. So these little actions, it helped Air Force sort of prepare better for the war. And again, the war was inevitable. 1947 Syed sir also brought out partition. The causes of this war, I think, lied in the partition. Wahin se the whole story started. And then Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. She very rightly quoted that you cannot shake hands with a clenched fist. अगर सामने वाले ने मुट्ठी बंद कर रखी है तो आप उनके साथ हाथ नहीं मिला सकते, हम जितना भी चाहें. So Pakistan was so belligerent at that time. After 62's defeat, they tried in 65, उसके पहले the run of Kutch action, and 71 war again. Their whole actions were belligerent because General Ayub Khan was a military man. General Yahya Khan was again his army chief when he took over, and आते ही उन्होंने martial law लगा दिया. So this is what happens when the democracy is not established, when there is no checks and balances on your policies, and there are no audits and there is no one to question you. So they thought that okay, war is the answer. War is not always the answer. I mean, 71 war for India's perspective, we see the Clausewitz's most quoted quote hai, कि war is the extension of policy by other means. So those 14 days that we fought the war, that was actually the extension of policies that had started many years ago in South Asia, both Pakistan and India, and of course East Pakistan. Indira Gandhi ji, she had started referring West Pakistan as East Bengal as early as February and March 1971. So in her mind, she was very clear that this part of Pakistan will secede at some point. And of course, the famous meeting that took place between her and Army Chief, where General Sam Manekshaw told her that in the month of April that we are not yet ready for war, and monsoon is coming and the army is not ready and the preparation needs to be done. Otherwise, she was ready to go to war in the month of April. Both by General Manekshaw and her other advisors, political advisors, they told her now is not the right time. And that helped Indian Army prepare because they knew the war is inevitable. हमारे पास time है prepare करने के लिए, and they ticked all the right boxes, made adequate preparations. And then the last 16 days was just the culmination of that preparation. So in that, there was a lot of stories that came out. I mean, Air Force wise, we could see that India के पास उस समय Western sector में we were at par. With the aim was to hold Pakistan from Western sector and totally capture the Eastern sector. So that was Indian strategy. And Pakistan's strategy, the east of the defense of East lies in West. So they thought, ignore the East, जो Bangladesh वाला area है, उसको ignore करो. हम will fight a proper war in Western section. So I mean, they didn't do it. They didn't think it through, or they didn't do it well, and hence the consequences they had to suffer. The worst thing they could do was that as soon as the action started on 23rd March 1971, the meeting I think took place on, if I remember correctly, it happened on 23rd March, and 26th March onwards, their Operation Searchlight started, which was the massacre of East Bengalis, of Bangladeshis in East Bengal. Straight away, they grounded all the Bengali officers in the Air Force, right? To give you an example, East Bengal में, Dhaka में, उनकी एक squadron थी, जिसमें कि they had the 8 fighter aircrafts. So total 1600 के आसपास उनके थे वहाँ पे उनके airmen, है ना? Sorry, they had 1222 personnel in that squadron, out of which 645 Bengali officers and airmen were grounded. So they almost 2/3 of their almost half the strength in East Bengal, and generally speaking, all of their entire air force, at least 1/3 of the strength was already grounded, was out of action. So they sort of shot their own foot by doing that. So and then they still decided to go ahead with the war. I think the reason they did preemptive strike on 3rd of December was because just before 1967 May, Israel had done the same thing in the Arab-Israeli 6-day war. They had done the same thing to Egyptian Air Force. They did preemptive strike and completely destroyed Egyptian Air Force. And then for the next 6 days, they had a free run, capturing the Sinai Peninsula, right? So they thought they'll copy that model and do it on India. Of course, Indian aircrafts were adequately dispersed and not much damage was done in those. And plus, they sort of declared war and India was ready, and the rest is history, right? But in this battle, if you read the sorties that took place, now Eastern Sector, again, if you go back, we had 8 squadrons versus 1 squadron of Pakistan. So as I was saying earlier, that in Western Sector we were at parity, whereas in Eastern Sector there was 1 squadron of Pakistan and we had 8 squadrons sort of in comparison. So we were strength wise, they were overwhelmed, right? On ground, yes, there were 3 divisions on ground and we had 3 corps. So which I think offense defense में जब operations की बात करते हैं तो हमेशा 3:1 का ratio होता है कि जो भी attack करने वाला है उनकी 3 times forces होनी चाहिए defense करने वाले से, है ना? So that ratio was met. But air battles में, that's the reason, because we were 8 versus 1, we were able to gain that air superiority. Air superiority means you totally dominate the skies, है ना? उनका कोई भी aircraft आएगा ही नहीं. So you can freely, without any, the only danger is from the ground fire, जो anti-aircraft fire होता है, guns होती हैं, उनसे, है ना? So with that in mind, you can completely dominate the battlefield and carry out your ground operations and everything. So first 2 days, Air Force ने sort of they destroyed the gun field, as sir mentioned. Craters कर दिए थे, not one but twice. एक बार उन्होंने पहले दिन crater किए थे, they sort of repaired in 6 hours, and then next day again they created craters, huge holes on the runway, and then उसके बाद उसको repair करने में उनको 12-13 घंटे लग रहे थे, and then they totally gave up. And the Air Force जो उनके officers थे, they all sat together and then sort of, I think they I don't know if they flew or they sailed to Burma, and that's how they escaped from there, prevented becoming prisoner of war. Because उनके planes तो थे ही नहीं, and they did not destroy their planes because they thought कि burning planes को देख के ना आर्मी का भी मोराल लो होगा. So they quietly उनको damage कर दिया था, internal parts उनके थोड़े बहुत destroy कर दिए to render them unusable. वो बाद में फिर Bangladesh Air Force sort of repaired them and then they started using them. And another thing that I wanted to mention was the role of kilo flight. Another tick that the good box that India ticked was the use of creation of Bangladesh Air Force. So as I said, Bangladesh ke Air Force ke jo officers the, sorry, Pakistan ke jo Bengali Air officers the, they were grounded, and some of them revolted. Now in East Pakistan, Air Officer commanding the I forget his name now, Zafar Masood. Yes, Air Commodore Zafar Masood was the Air Officer commanding on 23rd of March. He was asked by the army, General Tika Khan, to use air assets against their own people, and he refused. He said, Air Force will not be used. He even protected the Bengali officers. He, of course, grounded them. He protected, he said, you are safe inside the Air Force station. I'll protect you and your families. If you want to go on leave, more than happy to sanction, but don't do one thing, defect mat kar jana bas. Don't go and join India, है ना? ये उन्होंने मना किया था. So officers पहले resist किए, but then on 31st March, he was also changed. Someone else, I think Air Commodore Inamul Haq came and took over, and he was told to leave his post, and he was sent back, and then he was resigned. But he could not be sacked because he was very popular from 1916 to 5 war. I think he was the commander of the Sargodha airfield at that time. So he led a very brave action at that time. So he was very popular in his circle, so he could not be sacked. But he was changed. So when the command changed, and then Bengali officers, of course, they fled, and they had no choice but to go and join their erstwhile enemy, which is India, right? I mean, totally irony took place at that time. Those Bengali officers who joined India, defected to India, they were qualified pilots. They were insisting that we want to create our own Mukti. Now, Mukti Bahini, initially they were the rebels of East Bengal Rifles. By August 1971, they had become very organized. Like with India's help, and of course, they're all defected officers. They had organized into 3 brigades. Navy में उनके 500 plus persons हो गए थे. They had created that asset as well. And Air Force officers wanted to create a little air sort of component of Mukti Bahini as well.
Sure.
Now, uske liye they needed some assets. So initially, the air chief refused. Ki hamare paas resources nahi hai. We already tied up. We couldn't do that. There's an interesting anecdote where air chief was in Calcutta and he was having dinner, and he had invited Group Captain Khandekar, who was the senior-most officer from Bangladesh, East Bengal Air Force, who had defected to India, and he invited him for dinner as well. So Group Captain Khandekar sort of spoke to him, give us some air assets, and refused. And then he went and spoke to Mrs. P.C. Lal. And in front of him, Mrs. P.C. Lal sort of, forcefully spoke to the air chief and sort of convinced him that we need to do something. In turn, when the air chief over there, he nominally agreed. He said, I'll try. He went back. He spoke to the higher-ups, and then the sanction was granted. And then one allowed helicopter, one Otter twin-engine aircraft, and one Douglas Dakota aircraft, which was gifted by Maharaja of Jodhpur. These three aircrafts were gifted to them, and all the surrendered officers, those surrendered officers, not just army officers, there were some civilian pilots from Pakistan International Airlines as well. And there were pilots from Plant Protection Agency as well, who had joined and wanted to fly for the for Mukti Bahini. So their core group was created, and officially they were organized on 28th of September 1971, which is still till date recognized as the raising day of Bangladesh Air Force. And they created Kilo Flight. And when on the night of 3rd December, when Pakistan carried out the raid and they declared the war in India, the first air attack on Bangladesh, on Pakistani army assets, was carried out by the Kilo Flight. And only after that did Indian Air Force join in, because nominally also we want to tell them, this is your war, you will fight it, we are only here to assist. So that's the reason, I mean, India did their best. They went, did their job, and they got out. And I think I'll stop here if you, and in order to, otherwise we'll digress the conversation.
Not at all. I think बहुत interesting हो रहा है the whole story, because अभी जैसे Wing Commander Krishnamurthy sir ने बताया और आपने बताया, we're able to join all the blocks together, and I'm just trying to pull up some pictures so we can show it to people. Let me just try and get these up here. So Kilo Flight की जो हम बात कर रहे हैं, I would like to show that here. And as we do that, sir, Krishnamurthy sir, I definitely want to hear from you if you want to add something to this before we, start talking about the surrender story, sir. So this is a picture of Kilo Flight. This is one of the planes which was given for the surrender, sir.
Yeah.
Sir Krishnamurthy sir, we would love to hear from you.
No, one thing I want to add up to Kamaldeep is,
sir,
please remember, if you see the map of East Pakistan, the present Bangladesh,
Haji,
we are all around.
Sir.
India is all around.
Sir.
And the south, where they reach the Bay of Bengal, is also approachable by us, whereas the Pakistan on the west is on only one side. Okay, we may have Karachi and things like that approachable by sea, but they were far off. Whereas this one was very easy, and it was a phenomenal happening in the 3 days to totally take over the skies of not only the Dhaka and other areas, towards the west also to an extent. Though they had some hit and run cases by the Pakistani Air Force, it happened. Number one. Number two is, the helicopters were operating along the border, sometime inside the border, officially not inside, but inside the border, and finding out what the army exactly wanted on the border. 4 Corps, we were intimately associated with number 4 Corps, General Sagat Singh, and our squadron. All along from the south of Meghalaya downwards to Cox's Bazar. We didn't go that much to Cox's Bazar, but we knew what were there because we had Mizoram extending that much. If you see the picture of the Mizoram today, it will take you to Cox's Bazar, very close by. And we were all there. We knew what exactly was happening. And we also knew one thing, that our role is not going to be just passive. When I say passive, it's not just going to be a mercy mission type. We are going to have something more. And true enough, As per our expectation, as per our deduction, Sagat Singh, General Sagat Singh and Chandan Singh, group captain that time, later on he became Air Marshal, Air Vice Marshal, they knew that the helicopter can achieve what the entire world could not achieve. Why I say the world? We learned many lessons. The entire world learned lessons of the helicopter into the war field from Vietnam War of USA. They did not carry like this. They carried a few, reached a particular place, got on from there, cleared that area, and then went away. Whereas this one was to cross and advance towards the target. What was our target? The capital. The capital is the place where the country is. The East Pakistani headquarters, army headquarters was there. The governor was sitting there. The civil government was there. So catch Dhaka in your pocket and the entire East Pakistan is yours. Then that is exactly what happened. Number one point. Number two is, what we must remember is Nehru. Initially, he said, Bandung Conference, Indi Chini bye-bye. We are all for non-alignment. Absolutely fine. But that is the advantage the China took. That is the advantage the Pakistan took in Gulf, the Kutch War as well as 65 War. And they were only hit and run mainly. But whereas by the time Indira Gandhi became the Prime Minister, she was surrounded by learned, not that others were not learned. When I say learned about the surroundings and physical and the military capabilities. And they were the one who said, these people means the refugees. They will not go just like that. They are going to be it is a wanton, destructive plan by the Pakistan, because not only the sufferers who came, there were actually many other Bengalis who were pro-Pakistan. They have also come along with them. It is to the credit of the army that the refugees did not get mixed up with the local population. They were into the thing. And this is the reason when we said we had to fight, we had to do the thing. Okay, now it is there in the history. I cannot quote because I was not there, but I know who in the army even today alive can quote. The General Arora very clearly told General Sagat Singh, you means the 4 Corps will not cross Meghna and come close to Dhaka. Please do not come. Please look to all areas east of Meghna River. By a sheer determination that he wanted to cross Meghna and cross the Meghna at the broadest point by the helicopter and go and surround, besiege Dhaka is the master stroke of our late General Sagat Singh. And along with him, the Air Force element was the Chandan Singh. He saw our squadron flying, capabilities, maintenance. Please, I want to quote here, I want to keep it on the record. We did not have a single failure or downtime of the helicopter during those 16 days. That goes to the traditions which has been built by all the helicopter units, and particularly in Kumbigram. Those days, Kumbigram was considered as punishment posting. But today, when you say I was in Kumbigram, people say you were very lucky.
Wow.
And yes, we were lucky. And we were lucky in that it used to take 3 days to go from Calcutta to Kumbigram. That is Silchar.
Wow.
Yes.
Silchar.
Now today, only the Indian Airlines used to do it in 1 hour, 25 minutes. Okay. But when the war started, they could not cross East Pakistan. Okay.
Amazing.
And keeping all this in mind, when Sagat Singh said, let us cross Meghna, we put 11 helicopters there and we flew entire night. We flew till morning 3 o'clock and we dropped in. And as the luck would have it, there are 2 things which happened. BBC mistook a battalion for a brigade, number 1.
Yes.
Number 2, Pakistani so-called intelligence thought we had introduced Mi-8 helicopters, Mi-8 helicopters, whereas we were flying only Mi-4. Mi-4, old 1962 vintage, 1962 vintage, piston engine, 14 cylinder, capable of carrying 10 passengers at a time. It is a different matter. We adjusted the fuel, we adjusted the rest of the things and carried 17 each in each helicopter. 17 troops in each helicopter, fully armed. We quickly dropped them. The last 3 waves were the food, arms, ammunition, and whatever you wanted. And when a tank got stuck in the marshy part of the thing, helicopter went and showed them the way, please go this way. This one is all in the record. I don't have to say that. But I am saying this because people must understand that the helicopters are so quiet. And what they did, they must have carried casualties. They must have carried the arms and ammunition. They must have carried rations. No, we did much, much more than that. These are all on record. We have the logbook. We have the war history, and we can prove it. At least our squadron, we can prove it, helicopters. So in that, I am very proud today to be talking on behalf of the helicopters. And I stand here, I represent the helicopter, all kinds of helicopter we had that time, Chetak, Cheetah, Mi-Force. And I can include a little bit of the army element of the helicopters also. So I can say with positive attitude and with great courage that we did. We will not say we won the war, we accelerated the war, we accelerated the surrender. So that is what I want to say. Now, let Kamaldeep say a few things and you want to ask a few questions. I will talk to you about the surrender or the final day. Please go ahead.
Right, sir. So just to add to that, I definitely want to add that, there's a saying that when ships were made of wood, the sailors were made of steel. And now when the ships are made of steel, the sailors are made of wood. But no disrespect to the current flyboys and the pilots in the Air Force and Navy. The pilots at that in 1971, who even on the last day when they attacked the governor's house, the pilots had flown with a stopwatch and a tourist map on their lap. There were no operational maps available. 1-inch tourist map printed by Burma Shell.
They had the road map.
Yeah, that was a road map printed by Burma Shell. And luckily, I mean, if you read the testimony of the pilots, they said, I don't know how that map appeared in the operations room. We just picked it up and we just ran because the news came urgently in the morning that we have to be at the time on target was 11:20 a.m. something because the meeting had started at 10 o'clock in the morning or 10:30 in the morning. So the urgency was such they just used stopwatches. I mean, there were a number of problems. Their instruments were mystifying. They could not see. They were flying blindly. And they fought war like that. I mean, today you don't even do exercises if you're if you don't have the whole package. So totally very impressive display of courage and guts and determination by the pilots of Indian Air Force at that time. And yeah, I mean, again, I always have a perspective view of the whole thing. I mean, as I said earlier, there was only 1 squadron of Air Force versus 8 squadron. That squadron still gave us a pitched fight for 2 days. And only until their all assets were destroyed, they were made incapable of taking off. I mean, we call them effect-based operations. We destroy the runway and then they were totally ineffective. Until that, they tried their best to fight the war and did not run away. So, I mean, soldiers are soldiers on both sides. And at ground level, I think this war was won at strategic and operational level rather than at tactical level. So that's what I wanted to add there.
Thank you so much.
At this point, I want to tell you that our average age in our squadron who flew the helicopter was 23.
Amazing. The आज के टाइम में 23 years पे हम लोग कंफ्यूज होते हैं करियर ऑप्शंस को लेके और यहाँ पे 23 was the average age of people जो कि एक वॉर में जाके एक दूसरे पराये देश को आजादी दिला रहे हैं. कितनी कमाल की बात है. This is really amazing.
Our commanding officer was 30 plus. Our flight commander was 29. I was 24. There were
So
guys who were
I have
23 and 24. I'll tell you how it happened.
sir.
Somewhat senior amongst us, they were sent for MI8 to the Russia for training. They were
Okay.
actually missing when we were preparing for the war.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. See, let us say a squadron has 20 people, let us say. And
Haji.
then we were literally 15 to 17 of us of this age group with half preparation in the qualification.
Sir.
Okay, that is when they said, can you fly at night? Yasko said we can fly at night. Then they said, can you fly at the treetop level? We proved to them that we could fly at the wheat grass level. The cutoff, the Bangladesh had harvested the rice, and then the empty fields were available, and then we flew at the level of the stubs of the rice, and then the trees and buildings were practically nil when we flew. But the biggest problem was some odd army or a paramilitary fellow. He had a rifle. One helicopter came back with 38 bullet holes.
Wow.
And our helicopters average had many. Lucky for us that none of them went and hit the important pipeline. None more of them went into the engine. None of them went into the sea. For all that, the Mi-4 helicopter engine is right in front. The pilots sit ahead. So you can say pilots were saved because of the engine, but even the engine didn't get hit. We were absolutely confident of what we are doing. And then we were told this portion is clear. So you go left, you go right, you go left. In the night flying, no one looks outside because you can't see anything. We look onto the instruments. And the Mi-4 instruments were age old. They were all Second World War instruments.
Right.
Okay. The Mi-4 is not a Second World War Mi-4, but Mi-4 instruments were Second World War, and nothing he cannot give. He had only a magnetic compass to give us a direction. So when we went from Agartala to Sylhet, we knew that it was northwestwards. That's all. We didn't know that. We knew the time, how much time it will take by the number of the amount of speed we have. So we went there. We just landed. If there was a fire, we picked up and landed somewhere else. So it went there. And of course, the FAC, forward area controllers, helped us a lot. So these are keeping all this in mind, the operations went swiftly, so much so that from the Sylhet, phase 2 was Brahmanbaria and phase 3 was the Meghna crossing. And after the Meghna crossing, when the General Saab, Jacob Saab went and threw the paper on the table and said, sign it, he signed it. He accepted. He didn't sign that time, he accepted.
He accepted.
Why? There was one big threat. They said, don't surrender, doesn't matter. We will keep quiet. The moment you surrender, you become our prisoners of war. We will look after you. But the whole lot of local population is waiting to kill you. So you would like to be killed by them or looked after by us. And at the end of the war, you can go back home. That is what played a significant role in the surrender.
Yes, it's an amazing story, sir. I just wanted to ask Kamal sir, I know I told you it will be 30-40 minutes and we are going over. So sir, you still have time. I know you're at work right now. So just wanted to be sure that you're able to continue. And
yeah, I have another 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. All right, 10 minutes is good, sir.
Yeah.
Krishnamurthy sir, बहुत interesting आपने भी story बताई है, and everyone watching is hooked right now. They're really keen and looking forward to hear a lot more about the surrender story. I think it's like जब शोले हुई थी, शोले movie बनी थी, तो उसका जो climax था, वो बहुत ही energized था, and that's what people want to learn a lot more about. You know, the surrender story. We've seen pictures. But you have witnessed history in the making, so we would love to hear from you about the surrender story, sir.
A few years back, I had gone to Wellington Staff College,
Uti,
and we were talking about informally, and I said I've only witnessed. I didn't have a fighter aeroplane. I didn't have arms and ammunition. I didn't have a gun in my hand. He said, sir, he was a fighter pilot. And the boy said, sir, we were doing practice in the Tilpat range and we do diving practices over the runway. You saw it in the actual war. I said, yes. On that basis, I agree with you. And I won't say lucky. No one wants a war. But when the war is thrust on you, we will fight. That is what we showed in the 71, right in the beginning and till the end. We planned together, we practiced together, and we fought together. And you also saw the surrender together. You saw the photograph, all the three chiefs, the Eastern Command chiefs are there. Okay, that is on the left with a tilted cap is Admiral Krishnan and Air Marshal Diwan. And the next is the legend, Lieutenant General Sagat Singh. After that is General Jacob. And of course, next is me. And when I realized that some photographs were being taken, I moved off from there. But what happened? My other hand is stuck somewhere else. There was such a lot of jostling. It is not because I am standing there for the photograph. I wanted to read. I had a camera myself. I wanted to take photographs. But in the winter, in the December, you know it now, how soon the sun sets, how early the sun sets. In Dhaka, which is half an hour ahead of Indian Standard Time, sunset is already there. That's what they wanted. Why they wanted so hurriedly on that area, on that particular time? They wanted the signature of Niazi that I surrender before he changed his mind, before anyone could do anything worldwide. And people also should know, your viewers should know, why Ramna Racecourse was selected.
Sir.
Ramna Racecourse was selected because that is a spot where late Mujib stood and gave a lecture that Bangladesh is free.
Oh, wow.
That was in March.
That
was in March. That is the time he said, this is now Bangla land. It is not anymore East Pakistan. Because I have won the elections. I am the chief minister designate of the entire West and East Pakistan. Awami League has won. And I am not being given the charge of the country.
Yeah.
Now, let the Bangladesh, the East Bengalis were always proud from time immemorial about the culture. They were very proud of their music. They're proud of their history. They're proud of everything. They said, you can talk to Bengali on anything, but if you talk about the culture, you will get defeated. And especially in East Bengal.
That is true. That is true.
So that is the place he stood and gave a lecture. And that is why when we all went on the 16th, we were all in Agartala. On 15 तारीख को हमको वापस भेज दिया गया है from inside East Pakistan. Go back to Agartala. Agartala we came, parked the helicopter wherever we could, and first proper sleep in our own land. We had in Agartala civil terminal, we had spread our bed cover, the ground sheet, the sleeping bag, and we were sleeping. Okay. And suddenly they said, sleeping bag. Yes. And suddenly at 2 o'clock, a message comes. These many helicopters are going to Dhaka because they are surrendering ceremony. We have to take the senior officers and the journalists. We said, sir, what about us? All of us. He said, on the quiet, any number of airplanes will go, but on paper, only 6 are going. So that is how all the 11 went. We took all the helicopters, parked wherever we did. I told you again, it is a very funny thing. Even the helicopter requires a little bit of maneuvering space. We can't just go and land on one spot. We require a little bit of maneuvering space. Fixed wing to bhuli jao. Isliye they came all the way from Calcutta to Agartala, and from Agartala they went to by the helicopter. Only privileged person like General Sahab and his wife, Arora Sahab, and they came from Calcutta into Dhaka in a helicopter. Okay. Otherwise, the admiral, the general, and air marshal all came in our helicopter. And Mi-4 is a very rugged aircraft. It is not like a Chetak Alwet helicopter. It is, they say, if you have to fly a Alwet helicopter, you require a tie and a suit. Whereas a Mi-4, you require a flying overall will do. So it is that rugged. Okay. And we carried the journalists, foreigners and Indian, and
Sure.
we carried the Mukti Bahinis. We carried whoever wanted to come. There were a few handful of fighter boys also to come and see
Sure.
how effective they were in this thing. And all of us, we wanted to go and see. All of us have flown for the past 16 days so intimately with army. We kissed each and every land. Whenever we landed, we kissed the land of the Bangladesh. So we wanted to go and see that place. That is how we were there. And reaching from Dhaka or the Kurmitola airfield to Ramna racecourse was another story. We had to hitchhike. People were ready with their vehicle, come with us. But the idea was not to give them the thing. He said, we need to go. I tagged on along with a foreign journalist, and he kept on shifting from one truck to the taxi to one cycle rickshaw also I went. So we did hitchhiking and landed up in. So I was one of the early guys who landed up in Ramana racecourse. So I could see these flag cars coming. General Sahibs, both the sides have landed up. Mrs. Arora had come with him, and the situation actually was very, very dicey. Why? Anyone with arm, anyone can take up to shooting. But Indian Army had beautiful administration organization capacity. They had disarmed all the people, and all the people who had to be disarmed still, they were kept at one corner of the racecourse away from this. No locals were permitted. Very, very few locals were permitted, and
Sure.
we were all milling around. I told you earlier, I had a camera with me. I had taken a lot of photographs during the war. Now I wanted to take the photograph like the journalists. I stood in front. I clicked 2, 3. I realized they were not coming because lack of my flash was not helping me. Then I said, instead of trying to take a photograph, let me go and read what he's signing. That is how I went behind.
Okay.
That is, I went behind the table in front of the other cameras. Okay.
Sure.
And then I did read. I also witnessed when the book I told you, Prachi,
Sure.
through the rotor disc, we got a story. It is called the penning history. How and which pens didn't write. This is the one. Okay. This is the one which will tell you how 3 pens did not write. How the A of Abdullah did not write. He had to struggle. Then somebody picked up one pen from his pocket and gave it to him. He cleaned the nib himself and then signed it. That is
Amazing.
how. And then the gold cap pen, वगैरह कुछ नहीं लिखा. So these are all I was watching. I was there standing behind the table for at least 16, 17, 18 minutes. Okay.
Sure.
Then I realized that some photo op is going on, which I don't want to be the part. But only the next morning I realized that I had come in the photograph. And
it's an amazing story.
By the squadron mates and my CO. He said, what have you done yourself? I didn't know. I was sleeping fast asleep. They called me. Hey, CO is calling you. Go. I went there. He says, what have you done? I looked at him. What have I done? I didn't do anything wrong. He said, look at this. The Amrita Bazaar Patrika was carrying that day a colored photograph of the surrender. Normally it is black and white.
I would love to see the colored picture. We'll definitely Google and find that, sir.
Yes, you will find that this. It is.
Sir.
It was not a colored photograph. It was colored photograph by the this thing. Okay. Later on, many photographs came with all. Original is black and white. What I've sent you is the original one.
Sir.
Okay, and
this is great,
and at home I have a painting done by a amateur photo painter. He said, sir, this is to you. I said, thank you. So he is from Indore. This is one I gave it to me. Nikhil gave it to me, Kamaldeep. My son gave it to me as a present for my 70th birthday. Sorry, 60th birthday. Okay. So he gave us this thing, and then he brought this from Indore and gave it to us. So we did, and then we saw the surrender. We were happy. Yes. Now, may not be official gazette has come out, but East Pakistan has changed over to Bangladesh. And that night, we all came back and slept peacefully in our own motherland after a gap of about 16, 17 days. So this is the one which I would like to tell all people, and this is the thing which I am very proud of in my life, that he may not have given me the millions, but he has given me the million through this, the participation in the war. I told you again, we all don't look for the wars. When the war is thrust on you, we will fight to the core. That is how we did. All the three services put together. We fought the war and got the surrender. Yes. Kamaldeep, what about you?
Sir, I just want to, I know Kamal sir office में भी है and he has another commitment, but before we sign off, आप दोनों के लिए एक छोटा सा सरप्राइज है सृजनी और उसके जितने ऑडियंस हैं उसकी पूरी टीम की तरफ से. So here's a little surprise for you, sir. सर, ये हमारे मन के भाव जो आपने इस देश के लिए किया, आप दोनों ने जो इस देश को दिया है, और जिस तरीके से आज आपने आकर इतनी कमाल की जो कहानियां हैं वीरता की वो हमें सुनाई, द वैलर स्टोरीज ऑफ इंडिया, उसके लिए हम बहुत ग्रेटफुल हैं. विंग कमांडर कृष्णमूर्ति सर आपके लिए और मेजर कमलदीप सिंह सर, संधू सर आपके लिए. सो हियर्स अ लिटिल वर्चुअल वर्ल्ड है सर, तो इसको वर्चुअली आपको प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं. A little certificate, which is essentially, it's nothing compared to what you've done for our country, sir. It's just a token of appreciation from us to recognize and tell you that we all value these stories and they will always stay very close to our heart. As we go ahead, sir, that's a copy of sir's book right there, and sir के हाथ में वो किताब है, हम बिल्कुल देखना चाहेंगे. I'm going to put you in spotlight.
Prachi, may I say two sentences on this book?
Bilkul, sir, absolutely. Put you on the spotlight.
What I want to tell you is the proceeds of the sales of this book, entire proceeds,
sir,
is earmarked for ALC, Artificial Limb Center,
amazing.
PRC, Paraplegic Rehabilitation Center, and QMTI, Queen Mary's Technical Institute for Paraplegics. These three institutes are in Pune. And till now, we have managed to give about 1 lakh rupees cash and about 2 wheelchairs and 3 water cooler cum dispenser from our side, from the sales. My request to all the viewers is, please see this book. It is available through Amazon, through the Rotor Disc, and it is very modestly priced, 250 rupees. And the language, we have been very clear, very careful about suiting all the students, all the young officers, all the young airmen, sailors, and the thing, because they also need to know. So out of these 250 pages, out of 232 pages, 65 pages are earmarked for the war and the surrounding stories. Rest all, or my wife and I have written many stories and articles on the India, including the Antarctica trip I did, and also the Kailash Mansarovar trip both of us did. So yes, all these things are there. I would request all your readers to buy this so that the proceeds go to the Artificial Limb Center. Please, from my side, this is it.
So this is a beautiful occasion to call it down. Tomorrow, by the way, 3rd December is also the International Day of People with Disability. तो जो सर ने बताया, इसके पूरे contributions हमारे फौजियों के लिए जा रहे हैं, जो कि जो 3 सेंटर्स की बात करी जहां पे आर्टिफिशियल लिम्स प्रोवाइड किए जाते हैं. तो आई थिंक वी शुड डेफिनेटली बाय अ कॉपी ऑफ दिस बुक इमीडिएटली. आई विल मेक श्योर वी शेयर दिस ऑन सृजनी. आप सबके साथ ये लिंक शेयर करूंगी. और
very modestly priced. 200.
सब एक मील भी सर इससे ज्यादा की आती है आज के टाइम में सर. Even if Swiggy or Zomato, it's a cost higher. I'm very grateful once again to both of you for joining us today. आप आए और इतनी अच्छी जो आपने हमें कहानियां जिस डिटेल से बताई सर, ये पेन की स्टोरी तो इतनी अमेजिंग है, ये पढ़ने के लिए मैं बुक जरूर खरीदूंगी. मुझे तो यही बात इंटरेस्टिंग है.
I will tell you the page number also. 1 minute.
बिल्कुल सर. And while sir is doing, sir, कमल सर आपसे एक बात जरूर पूछना चाहूंगी. आपने वॉर में पार्टिसिपेट नहीं किया था, बट जिस जेस्चर से, जिस कहते हैं ना जोश से आपने कहानी सुनाई, मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूंगी कि एक जो हमारी आज की जनरेशन है उसके लिए आपका कोई मैसेज है? व्हाई शुड दे नो अबाउट द वॉर? व्हाई इज इट रेलेवेंट फॉर अस टू नो दीज स्टोरीज? वो जानना चाहूंगी एज सर इज finding the page.
Well, I think war. The times we are living in, war is inevitable. है ना? We study causes of war. अब हमें पढ़ा जाता है कि war were fought for territory, for ideology, for resources. Religion caused wars. But one of the best quote that I ever read was that make a lot of sense, that the causes of war lie in the imperfection of human thought. Because we as humans, we cannot think straight, and we'll always remain like this until hum sab Gautam Buddha ban jaye. War is inevitable. Okay? But what we can do is we can control this phenomena. The two things that internationally also recognized is we should fight for the right reasons, and we should fight it the right way. So in 71 war, I think what India participation, they met both these conditions. And Pakistan, on the contrary, failed to meet these conditions. And the result was inevitable. So that's one thing. War, if you want to become a soldier, you're interested, read a lot of war history. Not just down at the tactical level, read the battles from all perspectives. Khud ke perspectives padho, dusri taraf ke perspectives padho, and make your own judgment as to what, because in today's world, whatever we see, not every true story is fiction, and not all fiction is untrue. Right, so read everything with a lot of criticism, critical eye, and with a lot of pinch of salt, and then make your own judgments. Read through the lines, and then try to make a judgment of what actually happened in history. है ना? हम कभी-कभी अपनी history लिखते हैं तो we tend to exaggerate, and sometimes when we are writing enemies, this victory is always written by the stories of war are written by the victors. So when we write about enemy, we exclude all points. So read all sides of stories.
Absolutely.
And secondly, I think the most important things that I've learned is that we have not won any war by hating our enemy, by ridiculing our enemy. We have won our wars by conducting good tactical operations. We were really good at tactics, we were good at operations, and we were really good at strategy. So this is an art of war that needs to be studied and implemented. ठीक है, हम दुश्मन को गाली गलौज करके उनको हेट्रेड फैला के अपने बारे में ऐसी जंग नहीं जीती जाती. Those wars until 1971, they were all gentlemanly wars. Captain Amrinder Singh also tells us a story where in 65 war, he was the ADC to General Harbakh Singh. After the ceasefire, and the night before, the battle had taken place on Ichugil Canal, jahan se both the sides had killed each other. A lot of casualties on both sides. Battalions had lost men and officers. And next day, when General went to the officers' mess to meet the officers, he asked, "Sane ka kahan gaye?" He was told that officers to Ichugil Canal pe baith ke Pakistani counterparts ke saath fishing kar rahe hain. So because at that time they personally knew each other. 47, 45 ke baad, regiments which were divided, officers and senior officers, they knew each other.
Right.
Those were gentlemanly wars. We treated prisoners of war with a lot of respect on both sides. So there was no hatred. We were doing our jobs, and that's how the war should be fought, by learning the good art of operations, good art of tactics, good art of strategy. And yeah, I mean that's all I would like to say.
You've nailed it, sir, very nicely, very rightly said, sir. Krishnamurthy, sir.
What the viewers must know in this connection is, after the Second World War, this is the second surrender in the entire history of this magnitude.
93,000 Soviets, sir.
I call it as we won the war by an innings and 93,000 runs. Okay, truly, sir. I say one innings means one innings is the Bangladesh, and 93,000 thing. After the Second World War surrender, where only Japanese surrendered, not the rest of the crowd. Whereas when these people surrendered, this is not a show. They honestly surrendered for the fear of their life. Please understand this, because if you had left it to them, they wouldn't have come out. At least the refugees could come out, Bengali refugees. They would have been. There were people trying to get out through, like he said about Cox's Bazar and Chittagong and things like that. Very quickly we plugged that hole. We have an organization called ARC. Those helicopters flew south and then plugged the hole. We dropped them. I remember I was in Mizoram that time. We went and dropped them all along the border that side. So there was no one who could run. If somebody says they ran away from the thing, it is just he wants to get some sabashi from others. Just ran away. Okay, this penning the history is on the page number 38.
38 ऑल राइट और मैं इतना बताना चाहूंगी आप दोनों को कि जो हमारे साथ आज ऑडियंस जुड़े हैं a lot of them come from the forces. So संजय सहस्त्रबुद्धे जो कि बहुत एक्टिवली 13 पुना हॉर्स का एक पेज है वो भी मैनेज करते हैं एंड हमें बहुत इंफॉर्मेशन जो है वो शेयर करते रहे हैं एंड ही कम्स एंड अटेंड्स ऑल आवर सेशंस. वीना अग्रवाल जी जो हैं मेरी मॉम सरिता चतुर्वेदी जी, माय डैड आल्सो इन द आर्मी, शिखावत जी जो हैं वो जुड़े हैं, कुमुद जी जुड़ी है. ये सब वो लोग हैं. माय डैड वाज लिसनिंग इन कर्नल कौशल चतुर्वेदी, मिसेस मीरा नायर हु इज द वाइफ ऑफ जनरल अनूप नायर, और सुनीता जी एंड देन वी हैव गीता जी, गीता द्विवेदी जो हर बार आती हैं सेशन सुनने. इनको छोड़ के शी इज द ओनली सिविलियन इन अवर फैमिली. एवरीवन एल्स इज फ्रॉम द फोर्सेस. सो आई थिंक फॉर अस इट्स अ बिग ऑनर दैट पीपल यू नो हु आर कमिंग इन आर ऑल एक्टिव एविड लिसनर्स और इनके इनपुट्स हमें मिलते रहते हैं. स्पेशल थैंक्स टू संजय सहस्त्रबुद्धे जी जो कि बहुत अमेजिंग पिक्चर्स और स्टोरीज और लिंक्स शेयर करते रहे हैं इस पूरी जर्नी में. सो आई जस्ट वांट टू थैंक बोथ ऑफ यू अगेन फॉर योर टाइम टुडे. इट वाज एन एब्सोल्यूट ऑनर टू हैव यू ऑन स्टेज विद अस सर. और चलते चलते एक छोटे से वीडियो के साथ हम अपने ऑडियंस को छोड़ते हुए जाएंगे. इस पूरी कहानी को जो हमने सुना है और जो हमारे वीर हैं ब्रेव हार्ट्स हैं उनकी कहानी को आगे कंटिन्यू करते हुए एक वीडियो दिखाएंगे. अगले एपिसोड में हम आपसे बात करेंगे उन ऑफिसर्स की जिनकी कहानियों के बिना आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर जो है ना वो ब्राइट नहीं है. ये वो हीरोज है जिनकी स्टोरी आपको पता ही होनी चाहिए. और बिफोर आई साइन ऑफ देयर इज अनदर पर्सन आई वांट टू टॉक अबाउट एंड मैं आपको एक पिक्चर दिखाना चाहूंगी हवलदार अब्दुल हमीद की और मेजर शैतान सिंह की. मेजर शैतान सिंह जो है इनका कल बर्थडे था और इट्स अ ह्यूज फेस्टिवल. इस स्टोरी के बारे में तो आज जो हीरो है जिनके साथ मैं आपको छोड़ के जा रही हूँ वो है मेजर शैतान सिंह. 1 दिसंबर को ही वाज बोर्न 13 कुमाऊं में. इनकी कहानी जरूर सुनिए. 123 जवान थे एक्चुअली जिनके साथ 1300 चीनी सैनिकों को मार भगाया था. दैट्स द स्टोरी आई एम गोइंग टू लीव यू विद टुडे. जाइए गूगल करिए एंड फाइंड आउट. एंड ऑन दैट नोट सृजनी की तरफ से हम सब की तरफ से आप सबका जुड़ने के लिए बहुत बहुत आभार, धन्यवाद. जय हिंद के वीर.
Thank you very much.
Jai Hind.
The Indian Prime Minister orders the immediate mobilization of troops and launches a full-scale invasion involving Indian forces in a coordinated air, sea and land assault. The Indian Air Force responds with massive retaliatory airstrikes. By 2100 hours, IAF fly into West Pakistan, bombing their airfields at Murid, Mianwali, Sargoda, Chandir, Risalewale, Rafiku and Masroor. Sorties are carried out throughout the night, crippling runways in the Western Theatre. In the east, the IAF bombed airfields at Chittagong, Jessore, Tezgaon and Kurbitola, effectively grounding the PAF Sabre jets. Seahawk aircraft from INS Vikrant attacked many coastal towns and decimated Pakistani ships at Chittagong and Cox's Bazar harbours and later Khulna and Mongla. The Indian Air Force pounded the Pakistanis both in the east and in the west, giving them no time to recuperate or retaliate, effectively grounding the Pakistan Air Force in both theatres.